Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. It is your favorite warlock, practicing necromancer. And today I want to talk to you about renunciation. A lot of individuals today forget this one key piece of information. Key piece of information. And this is why everybody wants to be a part of something. This is why you have so many segregational groups. And even in a philosophical or religious perspective, we see even, say, for an example, the JCI, the Judo Christian institutions, we see denominations within this. Satanism, same thing. Wiccan and paganism, same thing. Different denominations of herd conformity. Most of these individuals that want to come to any given religious or philosophical path working needs to remember renunciation. What is it and why is it important? Well, let's just talk about this for just a moment. Most people who send me friend requests or chats within Messenger or even right here on YouTube. Their only goal is fame and fortune, which doesn't bode well for their practices, even if they did begin to learn about this path working, such as Satanism, demonolatry, necromancy, or whatever path that they've chosen that is not of the JCI. Okay? Because the arts are kept secret for a reason. If you look at the old magus, the magi of old, they didn't just lock themselves away for a good lengthy time to master the arcane, but even through their careers as a black magician or a sorcerer or sorceress, their aim was knowledge, wisdom, through prosperity of self. The philosopher's stone, for an example, is you. You are that key piece, that alchemy that needs to be transformed to become something better. Why do you suppose that the Judo Christian institutions preach about the devil so much and compare him or a devil to that of a serpent? Think about this for an example. Just as an example, the serpent's punishment for revealing truth was to crawl on its belly. Is that not what a serpent does? And as for Satan, he is the advocate for those of liberation. He is the accuser. He is the adversary. He is not just a Gregori and chief watcher whose duty is to report on mankind, but even this, when those who come to the path of Satanism, it is this riches and fame and fortune crap of the new millennia, these watered down traditions of corrupted herd conformity. Have you ever gone to a rally, a protest, or even a church? Just out of an example. If you did, you would notice that you had different groups within the congregation. You had the pastor and the upper levels associating together. You would have the elderly off in a corner or in the center of the pews in the sanctuary just huddled together talking. The youth would have their own little corner to which they had for beliefs. And then you would have everyone else in their other corner. Religion of any kind, specifically that of organized religion, has two pieces of information that most don't take into consideration. They are the masters of manipulation, servitude, and most importantly, slavehood. In most countries today, human trafficking is illegal, and yet they don't go after the church. Why? Because they're associated with a so called divine being. Have you ever noticed how this divine being works? It comes down to the given situation, and there's always a reason for it. Always. And it is to keep the populace in servitude. If you do this, you will go to hell. Therefore, God is the only way. On the other hand, you can't do it yourself. So therefore, it creates what is known as servitude. It is a entrapment feature to which you have no choice but to turn your life over to them and let these elders mold you into what they want you to be. If you're born into a church, you don't get to experiment with the world. You don't get to experience other religious factions. So your spirituality becomes a state of ensnarement. Their way is the only way. Everyone else is considered evil and has to be put to death. If you look at coven based systems and Wicca and paganism, you'll notice that the priestess or priest teaches the underlings. They perform the services necessary for a coven to either rise and succeed or fail and dissipate. But if you seek outside information from what they are teaching you, you're considered evil. You're considered to be a devil, the Antichrist. Again, you're seeing that servitude, that entrapment. Our way is the only way. Herd conformity falls into many categories. The government officials hang out with government officials, the rich and famous, or as I like to call them, the rich and shameless. The look at me faction, I'm a big shot because I'm a multi-billionaire and can buy out some company that's really not worth the toilet paper that it's created from, to what was it, $44 billion. Is this important? I, I'm mac and cheese. I'm gonna get all off my phone and under your bed. Clean it up then. Okay? Take the phone with you. Well, I don't have a napkin. You don't need a napkin. Just pick it up, buddy. Daddy will be in a few minutes. I apologize. That is my son. It is a daddy daycare kind of day. Mama's not feeling too good. So, anyways, as I was saying, they do whatever the hell they want to do. They control the people through legal systems, fears of going to jail, breaking the laws of the land. You have law enforcement officials who think they can get away with anything because they have a badge. You have people who give up their rights of servitude and within the public eye, say the mundanes, if you will. I believe that's the latest term that the kids are calling it these days. When you look at your community, you have the criminal underworld, hangs out with the criminal underworld, trying to look respectable. You have those of the school systems who think they're entitled to everything because they're educators. You have feminists who have a hair across their ass, who are trying to make things about equality. You have those who are doing this latest movement of sexual orientation, if you will, bis, gays, lesbians, and apparently this is one of the most controversial hot topics according to human resources and debates. So it's not just religion that you fall into a state of servitude to. It's not just a career or even those that you hang out with. There's a couple old expressions. Number one, you are what you eat. And number two, you are guilty by association. You have people, say for an example, let's talk about this Musk guy. Don't know much about him, don't really care to. But you can't even get on social media without seeing his name plastered across numerous different sites. He bought Twitter for $44 billion. Must be nice to have that kind of money, but what did it cost him? to become that rich, to become a trillionaire. Now you went from a billionaire, a tri-billionaire, down to what? Your entire bank account just got wiped out, all because you dream of something more. Hmm. I was thinking about this earlier today, and I kind of wrote down some stuff. And since people want to talk about devils and demons, I thought I'd break it down for you. If you look at who you're hanging out with, if you look at who you associate with, again, guilty by association, herd confinement, herd conformity. And this literally hinders your careers, it hinders your spirituality, and it hinders who you are. Okay, and it affects you on a mental, emotional, and physical level. Okay, so the first thing you want to look at is who you engage with. Okay, who do you engage with? If you are associating with those who like to break the law, let's say drug dealers, let's say sitting around doing pot or some form of drug, narcotic. Number one, what's that doing to your health? Number two, what is the cost of doing those drugs? Number one, it is the beginning of what the JCI refer to as sin. This leads into more serious criminal activity, B&E, theft, anything that will supply your habit. Not mentioning how you react to people, okay? How you treat them. These individuals will then take it to another level, which is known as dream killers, the destroyers. And these individuals are there to limit you, to divert you, okay? Whereas the encouragement is to encourage you to try something, to do something through dares, through challenges. But here, this is the reversal. This is where they'll whisper in your ear and take you aside and say, "Hey, you can't do that. You have all these laws of the land that gives you freedom to do what you need to survive." Take the United States Constitution for an example. One of the biggest things out there right now is gun control. Really? The Constitution clearly states that it's every American citizen's right to bear arms. And here, over the last century, we have seen, even the last 2 centuries, we have seen limitations. We have seen laws put in place, hindrances that prevent you from having that right. Now, don't you find that interesting where people will sit there and go, well, guns are cowardly? You know, there are two types of people, those who go around killing people and those who commit murder. Okay. So if the law enforcement and military personnel are allowed to bear arms and go around killing and dropping nukes on people, on different countries, how is that different from an average citizen pulling a trigger. Isn't murder murder no matter what level you're at? Think about that. Think about it. But yet they try to make excuses to prevent you from having those rights, the same rights. Marcus Aurelius once said that if something is applicable for one man, so too is it for you to do the same. Philosophy does wonders. But yet history has shown that even with these laws and with the governments, you also see the spiritual applications. So the spiritualism would be hindrance because you're no longer listening to those spirits. You're no longer practicing what they're showing you because these individuals are limiting on what you believe is good and what is evil. Is that not a matter of opinion? You know what I'm saying? So if working with herbalism or even alchemy is considered to be a good thing because you can create medications, you can create beneficial substances that will aid you in your day-to-day life. Even if you are growing through your spirituality, guess what? It's all good. But if you use that for, say, baneful sorcery, or wrathful sorcery, let's say, for an example, you sell those products for a price, okay? Because it makes people happy. It is that supply and demand. The governments will declare it illegal. Why? Because they are not getting a piece of that pie. Okay? You did a good job, buddy. Yeah. So, anyways, these same people that are giving you those rights are also taking it away. They're those whispers. They're keeping the fear going. They're keeping those doubts in place so that you do not become wise. If you look at the witches and warlocks of Europe, these were considered to be back in the day keepers of the secret knowledge. Ironic, right? Keepers of the secret knowledge. So, those who meant to control it, like the JCI has done over the last 2,500 years, became envious because these witches were doing something that worked. So they started implementing laws, limitations, and then flat out saying, nope, you're of the devil, you're evil. If you're not a part of my God, then you're evil. So then they begin diverting lessons, their teachings. They're showing you their true colors at this stage because they don't want you to grow. They don't want you to mature. They want you to become a slave to that system. So it is not just physical reality, it is not just supernatural or spirituality. And it is definitely not just associated with your career or your physical rights to bear arms or whatever. Okay? It is your right to bear arms, but yet you have to have a permit. You cannot do this without doing this. First thing you need to learn about any tradition is renunciation. Okay? If you want to get into a religion, if you want to get into a business, a corporation, the first thing you need to understand is what renunciation is. Renunciation is the rejection of the old ways, the past affiliations. Those who have gone through AA or drug counseling, one of the things they teach you is not to fall back on past habits. The Church of Satan would refer to this as forgetfulness of past orthodoxies, prideful behavior, counterproductive pride. These are part of their sins, and yet they perform these sins every day. Every day. You have the Church of Satan, the Joy of Satan, the traditional Church of Satan, the Luciferian Church, you know, the Temple of Satan. You got so many different temples now that it's become a business, just like the Judo Christian institutions. It looks like they're doing good, but in reality, they are causing more problems than they are worth. You want to change something? Change yourself first. Separate from those past influences. Perform a rite of renunciation and walk away from them. Learn about yourself. Even Sun Tzu said the worst enemy is yourself. Friedrich Nietzsche said the same thing, but in his own words. Marcus Aurelius said the same thing. So it can't be a coincidence that some of the main Satanists or the main practitioners today are telling you this. And people are just flocking to these other people because they're these flashy, look at me types. What is that going to do to the magic that you want to wield? In fact, what is that going to accomplish through your affiliations with the spirits that you want to work with? Ever hear the old proverb, the road to hell is paved with good intentions? Think about it for just a moment. If hell is paved, the road to hell is paved with gold. It is paved with gold for good intentions. Then I want you to think about three things: physical, spiritual, and image. Now, I don't know about you, but I will not belong to any system that is about money and control, not about power. It's no longer about education. It is no longer about evolution of self. Evolution of self. It is about the flashy cards. It's about popularity. It's about suing somebody else because they don't like the way they're expressing their religion over Baphomet or a woman's right to have an abortion. Whatever happened to free choice? The the ability to choose for yourself. You know what I'm saying? What about freedom? All people are born free, free to choose, free to become whatever they want to be. But you have all these factions that are keeping this shit going. They're just keeping the cycle going. It doesn't matter if it's about racism. It doesn't matter if it's about sexual orientation or preference. It doesn't matter if it's political or religious. You got to look at who you're associating with. You got to look at your practices because that's what it comes down to. One of the reasons why I left Satanism is because of the fact that it became more of a hindrance, a limitation. The name itself became stagnant, but more corrupted because people are taking it, associating it with rock and roll, associating it with political stances. It became more about, well, we're doing this for all Satanists, but yet you're violating our members' rights. Meaning, if we're not a part of a particular sect, then your rights don't matter. Now, one of the things that history has taught us is that what happens and the cost of that revolution doesn't matter if you're back in the days of Julius Caesar and Jesus Christi, or that of Napoleon, or that of Adolf Hitler. Or even, say, for an example, 20 years ago, what's it been now? 22 years since 9/11, when we had to deal with Biden or Saddam Hussein. Think about this. And here we are today with Islamic traditions of having to wear masks in public, all because of a cold, a common cold that turns out to be biologically engineered by a company in China. Hmm. Ironic, but okay. But who gave the CDC permission to run everybody's lives? Oh, that's right, the government. Who gave the government the right to control the populace through fear of imprisonment, through penal codes? Oh, right, you did, the people. And who gave you the right to decide who's right and who's wrong? Oh, right, the church. You consider in the old days the Catholic Church, the Catholicism of monotheistic and polytheistic traditions. They would introduce their doctrine, get along for a short time, and then start putting limitations on things. Have we not seen this too many times through the world? Have we not seen this through Hollywood produced films? My family and I earlier today was just downtown. We were dealing with our cars because we had to get them registered just to make them legal. And we saw this group of pedestrians carrying signs. They were picketing, basically. According to the law, to do a picket, you have to have a permit. Otherwise, it's illegal. Second of all, what they were what they were picketing about was about ending the war in Ukraine. Every so often, somebody would drive by and honk those horns. Well, you consider that all these countries that are aligned against Putin, you have the tools at your disposal. He's sitting there going, "Hey, come at me. I got my finger on a button. Let's kick off World War III, the nuclear holocaust." Whatever happened about 20 years ago, or even 30 years ago, with getting rid of all these nuclear arms, keeping it out of dangerous people's hands? Hmm. It's like religion, really, because after the Catholics took over, what did they do? They went on a crusade for their little Holy Grail quest, just another excuse to commit murder, world genocide. See the witch trials, the burning times. How many wars have been fought over religion, politics, women, you name it, even resources. And yet people are sitting there saying, well, things need to change. Well, think about it this way. When is everybody going to stand up at once? Because that's the only way it's going to change. That's the only way it's going to change. You can pick up a sign and pick it in front of a courthouse. You can pick it in front of the state house. You can pick it in front of City Hall. Number one, dumbass, City Hall ain't gonna do shit. That's just useless energy. That's expending your energy on things that don't matter. The world does not want to change. People don't want to change. So why do you want to be in the world? In fact, why do you want to get involved and limit yourself in these little factions, keeping this cycle of hate going, this cycle of violence that goes all the way back to the Judeo Christian societies? They preach love, and yet they'll be the first one to shove that knife in your back. And then you sit there and you look at traditions like Satanism, necromancy, or some other left hand path tradition that is considered to be dark, heinous, and vile, such as Palo Mayimbe, Voodoo. You got all these groups wanting to fight them because why? They commit acts of hemomancy, which is blood sorcery, bloodletting techniques. Do you know that in Voodoo or any African Caribbean tradition, the animals that are sacrificed are so well cared for that and a lot of times they're more cared for than that of their own families. Or how about the animal rights? In this case, let's say the animal rights activists. Oh my God, they beheaded a dog. They cut the head off a chicken and is spilling blood on the Naganga or the prenda, the pedestal, the altar. Wow, really? Did you forget about the Old Testament, the book of the law? How about the tabernacle and how it was set up? But wait, people don't want to go there. They don't want to go there. Had a pastor, a guy, former military. He's one of the people that I take care of at work. As a dietary aide, I'm in charge of prepping fruits, coffees, doing basically being the bitch of the kitchen, if you will. And I don't mind it because people leave me alone a lot of the time. But here it is. This man came into the kitchen one day, and we were on lockdown. He's a Catholic. And my coworkers sat there and said, "Wish somebody would just tell him to stay the fuck out. Just stay out of the kitchen. He's not supposed to be in there." You know what this man told me? He said, and this is the arrogance of Catholicism. They don't want to go up against me because they want to get into heaven. They want to get into heaven, so they won't go against me. Just about every Christian goes by that line. And it's funny because this past weekend there was another Christian, another Catholic that came in to minister at the facility I work at. And the events coordinator was complaining because of the fact that apparently if you're not Catholic, you cannot go to those sermons. Wow. Keeping that cycle of hate going, keeping that cycle going because they haven't performed a rite of renunciation of past affiliations. They haven't learned from history. They haven't looked at themselves and what they truly want. They live in a state of servitude to society, not just their particular religion. Satanism, for an example, has this rite called the rite of renunciation. And when you go from being a Christian and you go into Satanism because you want to be free, you want to be liberated, this is one of the main rites that you do. And when you do this, you basically sever all ties with your former self, your former affiliations. So it doesn't matter where you go or what you do. If you have not performed this rite, the rite of renunciation, then you're not free. You're not free from the servitude and the binds that society has on you. Everybody believes the Christians, and yet the Christians come from a long line of, well, to say it nicely, mass murder, rape, homicide. They've broken every rule of the Ten Commandments, and yet people see them as the ruling body of good. Obviously, you haven't delved into other affiliations. You haven't delved into the African Caribbean traditions, the Hermetics, the Kabbalah systems. You know nothing about the works of Hinduism or Buddhism. Hell, even that of pagan or Wiccan traditions that are so watered down, it's more about making animal sounds, treating the rites and rituals as that of a children's fairy tale to make sure that everybody knows the consequences of the threefold law than it is about self growth, self mastery, and self education. You want to evolve, enlightenment is the key. Education is the key. You want to change things, first change yourself. That is the only way the world is going to change. And since most people go by the JCI today and their belief systems, I wrote down a couple of things that you can look at from the King James Version or the New King James. First Timothy chapter 4 verse 1. Second Corinthians chapter 11 verses 13 and 14. Proverbs chapter 18 verse 24. Matthews chapter 7 verses 13 and 14. Proverbs chapter 1 verse 10 and Romans chapter 16 verses 17 and 18. I want you to look into these. And this is going to tell you just about everything I just said today. Things that you could easily see through your practices, through your associations. And you'll understand why those of us that are old, of the old ways, are a dying breed. And why many of us are just basically saying, we don't want to be a part of it. We're not going to sit there and go, oh, boo hoo. We're not going to make excuses for dumbasses that don't want to do their own homework or to evolve. Nothing in this world comes for free. You want to work, or in this case, let's say, for an example, you want to eat, then you must work. You can't sit on your ass. You want to learn something? Pick up a book, experiment. And most importantly, I'm going to leave you with this key piece of information. The magics need to be kept pure. Sorcery needs to remain pure. The old ways are in purity. They are pure. Because those who keep that wisdom, those who are in charge of keeping that wisdom, I'm not saying financially or legally speaking, I'm talking those who have taken it upon themselves to uphold those traditions, keep it pure. They don't allow it to become diluted or corrupted. I want you to think about that of, say, for an example, the 9 noble virtues. Just out of an example. He'll tell you everything you need to know. All right? And one of the things that I recommend to you is just what I thought. Had something on my glasses. So I've decided that I'm going to be getting off social media for a while. I'm not going to be on much anymore, posting or anything, because the world doesn't deserve the knowledge put forth in this grimoire. But I'm going to keep it up here for those who truly want to learn. I've taught you guys everything I know from 30 years of experience. But it's time for me to delve back into the practices, the arts, and the traditions, and further my own career, my own studies, my own evolution. To go back into silence. It's got nothing to do with you guys. Those who have been loyal to this channel, I want to thank you. You've asked a lot of good questions. You've learned and you've grown from the teachings and the lessons put forth here through history, archaeology, through folklore, and through the lessons put forth. That tells me that education is something that you value. and that's a good thing. But for me, I didn't want you to think that I just got up and disappeared. This coming Monday, I do have one final interview that I'm going to be doing. And after that, you won't see me for a while. But it's okay. I'll still be around if you need me, if you have questions. Because the tradition that I follow now is something that I want to value and I want to further. So, with that said, take this with a grain of salt. Do your own research. And remember, don't let anyone hinder you. Always back up what you preach. And most importantly, always make yourself available to the public because you are reliable for the things that you say and do. All right? With that said, have a good one. Until next time.